Alright, boils and ghouls, definite change of plans. I was gonna do ginger snaps back. I can't remember the title of this movie for the life of me. But I don't remember a goddamn thing about that movie, and I guarantee it's not too great. So it can wait a day. I was browsing through Tubi and saw Grave Encounters. Now, I did a video on Grave Encounters and the sequel very early on in the channel, and a few of us in the community were just talking about this, that like older videos of ours we can't watch, and we're thinking about going back and doing revisited videos or doing, another video on those movies that we really love that we did very early on. And it's something I've done a few times with The Thing. It's my favorite movie of all time. It's something I've planned for Suspiria. I feel like I want to go back and do all the Argento movies again, honestly. And Fulci's, I did a Beyond revisited recently for Fulci. I feel like I want to do the same with House by the Cemetery, but then you'll get out of control. Like, especially with my personality. Then I'll start, thinking of mad movies, and there's just so much. There's only so much you can do, basically. I've covered 900 movies in the last 2 years since I started this channel. You can't go back and do dozens and dozens, 100 movies again. So I keep it to just the movies that I really adore and really mean a lot to me. So I saw Grave Encounters and instantly just said, I'm in the mood to watch this movie because this is my second favorite found footage movie ever made. Right after Creep, and a lot of it in Creep has to do with, I love everything about that film, but a lot of it has to do with Mark Duplass's just phenomenal performance in both the original Creep and the sequel. The sequel makes my top found footage movies also, but the original is just, I don't know, you can't beat it for me. The sequel's great, but his performance is, I think, the greatest performance in a found footage film. The character of Lance Preston in Grave Encounters, and we see him in the sequel as well, which, I don't know, the last time I watched the sequel is when I did the video on it, and it went way down from what I remember on the previous watch years prior, because I don't watch the sequel often at all. I watch Grave Encounters maybe 2-3 times a year. This is a comfort movie of mine. So the character of Lance Preston is probably my second favorite performance in a found footage movie. Just his whole persona and just his whole look, the black hair, his charisma, the way that they show at the beginning of this film that it's all bullshit, this show that they are filming. And I like how they poke fun at all the ghost hunter shows until shit actually starts getting real for these people.
Just fucking move. Don't worry about it.
This is another movie in the found footage genre that I will always recommend to people, even if they say they're not big into found footage. Same with Creep. I feel like a lot of tropes of found footage that people who aren't into that genre or just despise most found footage, the shaky cam, the nothing happening, just annoying dialogue, unlikable characters, this doesn't have that. At least for me and for many, many fans of this film and the found footage genre. This is a very highly regarded film in this subgenre. And for damn good reason. The cast is great in this. I love every character. Like I already talked about Lance Preston. Sasha is excellent in this movie. She's adorable. I love her performance. TC is the logic guy, the smart one who wants to try to get the hell out of there. Houston is hysterical. He's got some funny ass lines in this movie. Matt is the only one he's whatever. He's fine. But he's got some cool and creepy scenes in this movie too. Now, the Vicious brothers are the directors of this. I'm pretty sure I said this in the other video, which I say with all these revisits. It's going to be the same type of thoughts, because these are the things I think of when I watch these movies. Get a fucking actual name. Like, I'm sure it's listed somewhere, but the Vicious brothers, like, I don't like when people do that, like directors, when they just put themselves together or just make up a stupid name. I want to know, I want to know the names of the people I want to praise that directed this movie, like their actual identities, not some alias, the Vicious brothers. So for anyone who hasn't seen Grave Encounters, basically you're watching the recovered footage that's been edited for time of, I think it's the 6th episode of the show Grave Encounters, that's hosted by Lance Preston, who I said is very based off of a lot of ghost hunter shows back in the day, and they poke fun at that a ton at the beginning. There's some decent comedy in the beginning of this movie, but then as it progresses and stuff really starts happening, that's when the comedy pretty much ceases. And this movie touches on, like, my 3 biggest fears of all time, and we'll get there, but that's another reason this movie's so effective for me. But this is the last episode of Grave Encounters that's being filmed at an abandoned mental hospital. So they go and stupidly let the caretaker barricade them, put a chain on the door, lock them inside for the night, for them to do their whole paranormal investigation and make their TV episode. And if they don't catch a ghost, which they never have before, Lance says that. He says he would love to see a ghost, but until he sees one, he doesn't believe in it. And he ends up having the worst episode ever that you can imagine. This whole crew. And they end up getting stuck in this asylum. I mean, that's basically all you need to know going into this. Please check it out if you haven't seen this film. Most people have. Most decent horror fans have at least heard of Grave Encounters, if not have absolutely seen this film. The CGI faces that we get a little later in the movie for the ghosts, I have a whole thing on the ghosts themselves that we'll talk about. It's creepy. It doesn't look terrible, but I don't know, I feel like they could have went all practical with it. Now, something I don't think I touched on in the original video for this, I just said how Lance doesn't believe in any of this, because he says, when I'd love to catch a ghost, but I've never had before, we'll still make a good TV show. But his whole thing in the intro of the show is that he grew up in a haunted house. So is that just for the show? That's I guess how I always took it, that it was just his little bullshit intro, saying I moved into a haunted house, and that's why ever since I wanted to prove the existence of ghosts. Let me know how you guys take that. I think that's just like his fake backstory for this show. Now we see at the beginning here who tells us what we're about to see, being the footage of their last episode at this asylum. We see the producer. Pretty sure he's the producer, or he's the owner of the studio, something like that. But he plays a little bigger role in the sequel. And no, I'm not doing a revisit on that sequel. If you want to hear my thoughts on the sequel, I mean, maybe they change on a rewatch, because like I said, they went way down. Maybe it was my mood, but if you want to hear my thoughts on the sequel, check that video out. It's in the found footage playlist. But I even like his character in this and in the sequel. I forget the actor's name, but I've seen him in maybe another thing or two. I like his performance. He's only in this in the very beginning, but I'm talking more the sequel. I really love all the opening interviews when they get to the location at the asylum. And there's not many of them. There's only like 3 people they interview, and the gardener, which is probably my favorite scene in this movie from a comedic point. Like, of all the little bits of comedy we get here and there, the first half of this movie, it's probably the best line in this film. It's hysterical. But they have like the town historian or records keeper that shows up, and they interview him. I like his whole performance. I've never done this. Should I talk to you? Look at the camera. And then he gives the whole history of this mental hospital and the story of Arthur Friedkin, who I'm pretty sure is based off a real person, right? Somebody, if you know the answer to that, put that in the comments. I'm interested. But he was a big advocate for the lobotomy, and there were like hundreds of lobotomies done under his watch in this hospital. And he asks them, do you believe in ghosts? And he says, never have, never seen one, but you know, if they exist, this might be a great place to go looking for them. It's a good interview. Then they interview the construction worker who was doing work on the place, and one of his crew members that was up on a ladder claims that he was shoved off by some unseen force, and he quit the next day, and that there was also tools that went missing. Then we have the interview with the couple, and they said they were hanging out there. It's abandoned, you know, for years, so people must break in, vagrants, people party there. But I guess nothing bad happens to them because those people were able to escape. So I don't know what the reason for that is. But they said they were making out in the hallway, and they looked over and they saw a full apparition of somebody in a hospital gown. So it really sets the mood for this movie, those few interviews. Then we get this just brilliant scene with the gardener. Just the way he delivers the line.
I'm standing here with the resident gardener, Javier Ortega. Javier, have you ever noticed anything strange around the building?
No, not really. What do you mean?
Have you heard any weird noises or seen any ghostly activity?
I started working here.
Just started working. That's great. TC, can you just cut for a second? Okay, how about you make something up for the camera? Pretend, hey, Javier, that was $20, Sam. I'm standing here with the resident gardener, Javier Ortega. Javier, have you ever seen anything strange in the past 10 years of working here?
Yeah, I saw a ghost over here. It was really scary.
A ghost on the exterior of the building. Unbelievable.
In your last 10 years of working, the way he gazes into the distance, oh, I die every single time. Then we see Death Awaits, which is graffitied on the main door to this asylum, which plays, you know, a much bigger role in the sequel as well. Now, the asylum here itself, as a setting, probably my favorite setting in found footage. The Abaddon Hotel from the Hell House movies, that's very close. But nothing beats this asylum for me.
Give us a Fuck. I thought we were actually gonna have something here.
What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that?
And this is where we come to the things I've mentioned a few times in a video here and there when it comes up on my biggest fears in life, and how this movie plays on all of them. And that's why I think it's so effective for me. Being lost, 2, losing touch with reality completely, which happens to these people, and the third being held against your will somewhere that you can't get out of. Those are like my 3 biggest fears in life, and we see all of that in this movie. So that goes back to what I briefly touched on earlier about the ghosts in this movie. Even though, yeah, this is a ghost story and they're in a haunted asylum, of course. For me, though, this would have just worked without the ghosts. Just with them getting stuck in this asylum. And I love how the time dilation and how time slows down and also speeds up at the same time. We see them a little later. All the food is spoiled, but yet it's still dark outside, like at 7:30, 8 a.m. when he checked the times the night before, and it's supposed to be daylight out. And then it gets to 1, 2, 3 in the afternoon the next day, and it's still dark outside. I love all of that, and the way that it really makes you feel like you're there with them experiencing this. And the way that the asylum seems to change layout throughout the entire movie. Like that scene when they break through the main door to get out of there after they had a few of the little weird occurrences, like Sasha's hair getting pulled up.
Holy shit! What the fuck was that? What the fuck was that? Did you get
And they get that on camera. And then TC gets pushed down the stairwell by an unseen force. And, he gets kind of hurt from it.
Where the fuck you at? What the fuck? Matt?
His legs all fucked up. And then they can't find Matt. And then they try to finally break through the door. And it's the same door that has Death Awaits on it, but it's not the entrance anymore. There's just more hallway. That's terrifying. Like, that's where I would be freaking out. Absolutely 100,000% in every single way. Because how do you explain that? And then as they go around looking for Matt...
God damn, it's cold in here. What the fuck was that?
Everything seems to be changing, and we see this also expanded upon in the sequel. I need to rewatch the sequel, honestly. Again, it's not going to know the video, but I got to maybe rewatch it. Maybe I'll throw it on after this, just to see if it was my mood the last time I watched it, because there is some good stuff in there. So then they start going through the asylum after Kenny the caretaker locks the door with the chain and steals them in here for 8 hours until... I think it's 8 in the morning when he's supposed to come. It's 6 or 8. Pretty sure it's 8. Doesn't really matter. And I like how Matt starts explaining, even though this is like very common knowledge now for people who are into ghost hunting shows and the paranormal, how he starts showing off the gear and how it works, the EVP machine and everything. And then I like the little hot spots that are pointed out by Kenny the caretaker when he's showing them around. The tunnels. The bathroom with the tub where the woman apparently committed suicide. And then we get that great jump scare later. And you know how I feel about jump scares for the most part. That's a great one. The window that seems to open by itself every few nights or so. And Kenny makes sure that he locks it up real tight and it's open the next morning. So I like how they go through their whole routine here. I love when Houston shows up and he's the pretend psychic and he gives this whole bullshit speech for the cameras and for the show that, I see blood, a woman, she died right here. And then Preston's just like, Houston, that's exactly what Kenny the caretaker told us. That is amazing. Then they cut. Then I love how they're all laughing and just like, is that too much? Did I go too far? No, it was great. All of that banter is fantastic in this. And that's one thing that makes this my second favorite and a top tier found footage film is the characters and the dialogue. You don't have, there's a lot more terrible films in the found footage genre that have no memorable or likable characters than there are ones that have even a few, let alone the whole cast. And this, I think, is a shining example of one where the whole cast is just really fun and likable. But Houston is absolutely hysterical. When he's bitching later, when TC, and this I don't understand, I never have, TC says that he has his tools in the van. So they're trying to get through the bar on the window because all the windows are barred. It's an asylum. You're supposed to not be able to get out. So they couldn't get out, like they said, if they tried. So Houston says, do you have tools? And he says, I have them, but they're outside in the fucking van. Why didn't he bring the tools in? He knows that they're being locked in there overnight. They knew that ahead of time. So why did he leave his tools in the van? That just seems like a stupid decision or just a complete oversight. But I never understood that. Another goddamn rat jump scare, which we haven't seen in a decent while. So I'll forgive it just because of how much I love this movie. But I do think it's cool that Lance seems the most afraid and disgusted by the rats. Yet he's eating rats in the next movie. He's been in this asylum for 9 or 10 years. And usually I think it's very lazy in found footage movies. And we see a lot, especially movies that take place in outdoor locations or very dark locations is the use of the night vision. But I mean, it makes sense in the context of this movie because it's dark as shit in this place. It's abandoned. There's no electricity except for the lights that they're able to bring. And most of the lights that they use are in the main lobby, like where the food is and where they're hanging out and Matt's computers are and everything. So it makes sense, especially for the tunnels too, which are pitch black, even in the daytime, which they mention. Kenny the caretaker says it. So it makes sense why they're using the night vision. As compared to other found footage movies where it seems like they're just using night vision just because they think it looks cool, and it doesn't, like 90% of the time. Another terrifying scene is when they're trying to find the roof access, because TC remembers they were playing football, him and Matt, I think, like in between shots at the very beginning, like when they were taking establishing shots of the asylum, and he noticed that there was a fire escape and there was like roof access. So they try to find it, and they're navigating this ever-changing asylum, which again, this without the ghosts, like just with the few things that we don't see a ghost, like again with Sasha's hair being pulled up, TC being pushed down the stairs, even Houston's death, like when we see it on the camera and he just gets strangled and we don't see what's doing it, and then he gets tossed, right down the fucking hallway. That all would be fine. But when we actually start seeing the actual, like, ghosts and spirits that haunt this place, like when the girl turns around, yeah, it's a famous shot, at this point, I feel like it didn't need it. Like, just being in these people's predicament of being stuck in this asylum that is haunted and keeps changing all around them. Time is speeding up, it's slowing down simultaneously, like space and time is completely broken, and they're never getting out of here. That would have been enough for me. Like, it still would have been an excellent film like that. The ghosts are kind of like a little bit of a cherry on top, but I can take it or leave it. But when they get up to that that final stairwell to where the roof access is supposed to be, and TC just sees the wall there, and there's nothing, and it's not a new wall, it wasn't like just put there covering a door to the roof, it's just the layout of the place completely changed. His like little breakdown, it's not like a huge thing, but like you feel his despair. Like, no, like there's no way, like this was the way out, and he's like bangs up against it. I just love all the performances and all the characters in this movie. Oh, also another creepy scene in this earlier on, and we see this room another time or two. The room where the patient wrote all over the walls in like black crayon. That's effective. That's creepy. We have Matt's death. He disappears for a while, shows back up. He's in a hospital gown, and I love the touch that after they all fall asleep, they wake up with their names on the admittance, wristband, that now they are also patients at this hospital. Love that detail. Are you kidding me? Then we have TC's kill, which is probably the best scene in this movie, versus the gardener for horror versus comedy.
Matt! Matt! What the hell is he doing?
TC, get him away from the tub. Come on!
Come on!
TC, what the hell is he doing? I don't fucking know!
When he gets pulled into the bathtub and just disappears. Then Matt's death, he just plummets down the elevator shaft. Like I said, Matt's a whatever character. He's still likable. He's still a likable guy, but he's definitely not as memorable as everybody else on this crew. Yeah, then they see the woman in the hospital gown, cowered in the corner, and these stupid idiots go towards her and try to talk to her. I would be so out of there. You're in an abandoned hospital that you've already experienced a lot of paranormal activity. and you see some creepy ass woman, long hair with the hospital gown, and she's cowered in a corner and she's like crying or whatever, and you go towards her. I don't get it. Again, indifferent. And they head down into the tunnels. It's only Sasha and Lance left. And they're thinking that Kenny said these tunnels connect all the other buildings on the property, which is like huge property, like a few hundred acres or something like that, they say. And scary as it is, these things are pitch black. And again, though, it justifies the recording. It justifies them still having a camera in their hands because they need the night vision. Now, yeah, you could say they might have flashlights and stuff. I forget if they mentioned that they have flashlights and batteries are dead. Maybe the time speeding up while it's also going backwards. Maybe all the batteries are dead. But then the cameras would be too. But whatever, it works for me. Like, it's acceptable. And then Sasha, I don't know, just a mist comes in and then she just disappears while she's taking a nap on Lance's shoulder. That's whatever. I mean, they could have given her a better, exit from this film and from existence than just a mist coming and this little spirit taking her away. I don't know, maybe there was something else, a deleted scene, and it didn't work out. They went with this. Never really cared for it, but it's fine. And see, this is why I am indifferent on the look of the ghosts, because sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't. One shot that I do really like, and they did use practical, makeup and stuff, and then just enhanced it with CGI, which is why it doesn't look too terrible or anything to this day. It still holds up. And the guy looks just like Sid Haig, this ghost. And I say this every time I watch this movie. If you know what I'm talking, well, nowadays it looks like Sid Haig to me for some reason, this ghost, but it's a cool shot. Oh, the scene though with the hands coming out of the walls, that doesn't look good. That CGI did not hold up well. But that's like the only CGI I can think of in this movie that didn't hold up well or doesn't look good. All these years later, I still have no complaints.
There it is.
And I like the ending to this movie. Lance ends up seeing the ghost or whatever of Dr. Friedkin and the nurses.
It's impossible.
And he's given a lobotomy by Arthur Friedkin's ghost. And he said, I'm all better now. I can finally go home. Unfortunately for him, he doesn't know right now that he's going to be stuck here another decade at least. And he ends his recording, signs off.
Random encounters.
I went pretty quick through this, and I was barely watching it actually, even though I was in the mood to watch it. Like I said, this is a guilty pleasure movie of mine. This is a comfort film of mine. I've seen this movie so many goddamn times. Like, I know it almost in and out. If I get little details wrong here and there. It's 6 a.m. Kenny was supposed to show up, not 8. I think 8 is when they notice the time and they realize, shit, it's been 2 hours, he's late. So, little things like that, whatever. But I know this movie very, very well. And it's always a blast going back and rewatching it, talking about it, and I look forward to talking about it in the comments. So people, leave your thoughts on this movie, leave your thoughts on the sequel, and like I said, if you're interested and want to check out my thoughts on the sequel, it's in the found footage playlist. It'll be at the end of this video. For Grave Encounters, I'm Lance Preston, signing off.